Mayor Rick Goldring, and welcome to Burlington Matters. Burlington Matters is a program that I host here on Cogeco TV, featuring topical discussion with community leaders about the goings-on within the city of Burlington and within City Hall. Today we have a very special episode for you where we're featuring the two members of Provincial Parliament that represent Burlington. We have Indira Naidoo-Harris, who is the member of Provincial Parliament for the the riding of Halton, and we also have Eleanor McMahon, the member of Provincial Parliament for Burlington. But they're not only MPPs. Since the last time we had them on the show, both of you have received promotions, and congratulations for that.
Thank you.
Eleanor is now the Minister of Tourism, Culture and Sport, and Indira is the Minister of Women's Issues and Minister responsible for early years and childcare. Indira, did I get that right?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
Although there's been a title change, so it's now Minister of Status of Women.
Minister of Status of Women, as well as
Minister
early years
and
childcare.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, congratulations to you both. I know you haven't had much time to really reflect on your accomplishments because it's go, go, go all the time. So when you were elected back in, 2014, that was a shock to both of you, not getting elected, but the work that you had to do and the volume. And then you become ministers. What's that been like as far as the volume of activity and the pace that you're on these days, Eleanor?
It's, well, first of all, it's such a privilege to be elected, of course, and then to be named to cabinet is an incredible privilege. But whether you're on cabinet or, in my case, Treasury Board, in addition, it gives you a certain lens across government. So it allows you to anchor the priorities of Burlington in a different way. It also gives you a different platform. Indira and myself and Kevin Flynn, the three of us from Halton, of course, meet regularly and discuss issues of common interest and concern to our residents. And I think we would all agree that it's given us a really privileged platform to bring the interests and concerns of our communities to that forum and to have conversations and really position the community interest in a different way. So I think and I hope that it's been an advantage for us in terms of our capacity and our ability to get things done. And of course, we call ourselves Team Burlington for a reason, but we have that opportunity now. And Team Halton.
Yes.
And Team Halton. So that's my lens. Of course, the workload is considerable in different ways. When we were MPPs, we sat on committee. It was a different focus of our work. I kind of missed that, actually. I missed the committee piece because I loved the interaction with colleagues from across the House, which we don't get in the same way. But being on cabinet and being in Treasury Board really is a privileged place to be and really interesting.
And Indira, the pace of the job, did it change when you became a minister?
You know what, it is incredible. So I know I can speak for the two of us. We were hardworking anyway, and I really thought this is going to just take it up a notch. Well, it's actually taken it up several notches. But what it really means is that you have to plan your time. You have to really be organized, and you really have to have a good sense of what you need to take care of immediately, prioritize to get the job done. But ultimately, in the end, like Eleanor said, it really and honestly is truly a privilege because we get to be that voice for our people here in our ridings and with caucus, but now also in cabinet. So when things come through that we get to chat about around the table and make decisions about, absolutely we are also putting on our Halton and our Burlington lens to ensure that what we are saying at the table is reflective of what the people who elected us would like us to say. What are their concerns? How will this impact them? And so it gives us an even stronger voice when it comes to government and what we're working on. And so it's truly remarkable and wonderful and an honor.
I have a front row seat to what the two of you are up to, as well as your cabinet members. And the reason I say that, not only as mayor of the city of Burlington, but I also serve on the executive of the Associations of Municipalities of Ontario and serve on the MOU team. And I know there was a conference call with you the other day, Indira, with some of my colleagues from AMO that I wasn't able to be part of. But I get an opportunity to see what goes on and see what your government is bringing forward that will potentially affect municipalities. We're consulted. But I guess I look at the breadth of provincial government and all the different areas that provincial government is involved in. So you consider you have your portfolios as well, but as MPPs and as members of the government, you know, you have education and healthcare, which are the big two as far as taking up most of the dollars. But within healthcare, there's the health department. You know, here in Halton, there's paramedic services, there's housing, there's long-term care. Within municipal affairs, there's the growth plan and infrastructure funding and the Ontario Municipal Board. Within transportation, there is highways and Metrolinks, and then we want a new courthouse in Halton. And there's a Conservation Authorities Act review going on right now. And then in the rural strategies with regard to broadband and so on and so forth, and Development Charges Act review and all this, it is amazing the scope of the provincial government. It is broader than any other government in Canada, in my view, as far as what the departments that you're responsible
and I'm
for.
so glad you're bringing that up, Rick, because, you know, I think that regular Ontarians sometimes lose track of that, right? I mean, I think that they think about the Ontario government, municipal government, federal governments, and they don't necessarily always realize what all the pieces are. But so much of what we do affects people's lives every day in so many different ways. And, you know, while sometimes there are people out there talking at the water cooler about all kinds of challenges they're facing, I think sometimes we forget about, you know, all those things that are actually working well. And I'm always reminded of that, and I'm sure you are, Eleanor, when I travel. You know, when I leave the country, I go somewhere else, you know, no matter where it is, and come back home, and I just come home and I just think, oh, I'm so glad I'm in Ontario, I'm so glad I'm in Halton, I'm so glad I'm Canadian, because there's so many great things that are going on. But, you know, one of the things I did want to say to you is this. It's that the ability to really be out there and to have, you know, to be able to really affect change on in so many ways, on so many different levels that really affect people's lives is a huge responsibility. And I think that's what you're getting at, right?
Well, exactly. The breadth of provincial government is broader than any other form of government in the country. And as Hazel McCallion used to say, maybe still says, the federal government has all the money, the province has all the powers, and municipalities have all the problems. But anyway, we're not going to dwell on that.
No, it's
but
interesting.
In any event, we have a half-hour show. We've already used up a chunk of it. I do want to talk to you a little bit about your own portfolios, and then we're going to get into some of the local issues. So, Eleanor, tourism, culture and sport, very broad. How can you capsulize exactly what the role of your ministry is?
Well, it's interesting. As like Indira, I have federal counterparts, and so most of my colleague ministers have one federal counterpart. Indira has two, I think. I have three, which brings home to me the breadth of our ministry. And people in a lighthearted way capture my ministry by saying, "Oh, it's the Ministry of Fitness and Fun," and there's a degree of sensibility about that. But to be honest, tourism, culture, and sport is a huge economic ministry. When you think of tourism alone, which brings in $30 billion to our economy. That's 4% of our GDP, 320,000 jobs. It rivals construction in terms of its impact on the economy. And sometimes people forget that. I think it's because we happen to live in the best province and the best country in the world, and so sometimes I think we miss what others see when they come here, which is what a beautiful place that we live in. And so tourism had its best year ever last year. It's growing at a remarkable rate. Of course, the Americans are our #1 market, but the Chinese market is rapidly becoming an increasingly important market for our tourism dollars. And of course, in this context, I work with my colleague tourism ministers from across the country. So we're working closely with the industry. We just announced a new framework for tourism, which is really a roadmap for us to work with the industry to give them what they need to be successful and to bring that kind of economic potential to our country. That remains very much the case. So that's the tourism piece. On the culture side, we launched a culture strategy last year. Actually, it was my first event as minister. I stood on the shoulders of my predecessor. The reason that the culture strategy is important is because it really is that framework for moving forward. It's one of the first in the country. It's the first as government that we've ever done. And what it does is, again, take that economic ministry. So the culture side of our ministry is $25 billion as an economic item, 280,000 jobs. And it encompasses 29 agencies of government, things like what the people would know. Right here in Burlington, the RBG, one of my agencies. MPPs, the ROM, the AGO, but also film and television, which is an incredibly important part of our economic diversity as a province. And the investments that film and television are making and are going to continue to make in the Ontario economy are really dynamic. They're growing quickly. I just met with executives from NBC a few weeks ago, and they're looking at investing even more in our economy. Places like Sudbury and Timmins are growing, believe it or not. They're starting to call them Burbank North. But we're investing through the NOHFC, the Northern Ontario Heritage Financing and Investment Corporation, through our colleague Michael Gravel. And the investments in Northern Ontario are growing. So tourism, culture, and then on the sports side, of course, also an important economic contributor. But we just announced a framework on sport last year as well, and we're working closely with our local sport organizations. So really busy on all three fronts. And if I may, one more thing of very much of importance right now is our 150th anniversary. Yeah. And I'm delighted that that falls within my ministry. And of course, we've got great events coming up in Burlington this year, but there are 367 activities going on right across our province this year. So I can't make it to everyone, but I hope to get to some of them. And those are going to be a great way for us to celebrate and create an important legacy for our province too. So lots of things going on.
Very
Great.
Exciting. Yeah.
I mean, it is broad. I mean, you know, think how broad the government is, and then your ministry is broad in the first place. So going over to your ministries, Indira, status of women, a ministry responsible for early years and child care. Can you enlighten us as to what exactly you're involved with?
Oh, absolutely. So both of these are new portfolios, right? So minister responsible for early years and child care is a new ministry that was just created recently, along with the Minister of Status of Women. And so with that comes incredible responsibility, but also opportunities. So I feel very excited about both of these portfolios because they are really visionary in a real sense. And so when it comes to the minister responsible for early years and childcare, so that file, we have committed a historic amount of money, but also we are transforming the way we deliver childcare and early years programs for families in Ontario, right? This is huge because we all know that families out there are facing challenges when it comes to childcare in the province. And so, you know, we've really decided that when we look at education, it should be seamless. And while we've shone a light on kindergarten and also on our elementary schools and our high schools, you know, where our graduation rates are now at amazing levels, and then, you know, free tuition at the university level, the Premier really felt it's now time to go to that next step and shine a lens and a focus on those early years, those 0 to 4 years. You know, because as parents know, and all of us know out there in the public and community, kids don't just start to learn when they're in kindergarten or grade 1. You know, they really start to learn from day 1. And so what can we do as a province to enhance that, to give families and parents the supports they need, and allow them to participate in the economy and be able to do the things that they want to do for their families with ultimately in the end peace of mind. You know, if you choose to go out there and work and participate in our economy, you should be able to do it with a bit of peace of mind, being able to find a place to put your child in with, if it's childcare, and really feel comfortable with that. So that's the first one. 100,000 new licensed childcare spaces we've committed to over 5 years. We're doubling what we have right now in the 0 to 4 space, and we're also making some real changes in the early years and childcare programming file. That's supports for families who choose not to go the childcare route. When it comes to the ministry in terms of the status of women, very exciting stuff. So, you know, there's a lot of things going on in society right now, and the Premier really felt that we needed to ensure that Ontarians knew that when it comes to our province, you know, we are going to do everything we can to reduce those barriers that women may be feeling out there. So, you know, women's economic empowerment is a huge piece. In addition to that, of course, is the sexual violence and harassment initiatives that we are working on, that certainly Eleanor was a part of on those committees. And in addition to that, women on boards, how can we, you know, increase the amount of women on boards, and so, you know, move forward with change. And we're going to be doing some things with human trafficking, and you'll be hearing about that very soon. So very, very important files that I'm excited about.
There's no, as I said, there's
women
no
and
shortage
families.
of material to talk about because of the ministries you're involved in, but you know, as broad as your government's involved too. So many different issues. And we're going to come back to some of those. We're going to take a quick break. And we'll be right back with Eleanor McMahon and Indira Naidoo-Harris talking about their work at Queen's Park. I'm interviewing Eleanor McMahon, the Member of Provincial Parliament for Burlington, as well as the Minister of Tourism, Culture and Sport, as well as Indira Naidoo-Harris, who is the Member of Provincial Parliament for the riding of Halton, and is also the Minister of the Status of Women and the Minister responsible for early years in child care. So we had a little bit of a glimpse about your portfolios. I do want to talk about issues locally. And you, like me, hear from many people in our community. And Eleanor, I'll start with you. What are the things that you're hearing about from people in our community, recognizing you hear a lot of different things, but what are some of the common themes?
I think some of the common themes, and I'm sure Indira would echo these because they're largely areas of provincial responsibility, but healthcare and education are predominant themes that we hear about in our offices, and they are certainly on top of mind for people. From a healthcare perspective, home care and the transition of a rapidly growing and aging population. Of course, as you both know, Burlington is I think it's the oldest population, isn't it, Rick, in the GTHA by population?
GTA, it's right up there.
And
we're going to get the new census data for age groups in May, which will be very interesting.
Which will be very interesting, both from the perspective of seeing where we are, but potentially where we're going, right? And I know that that preoccupies you from a planning perspective in terms of what our community is going to look like, because all of us are seized with issues that take us beyond the election cycle, and we need to and want to plan for those futures. So we're getting a new hospital in Burlington, which is terrific, but the home care side and the transformation of people out of acute care and into home care settings. And I would attach to that affordable housing issues are something that I hear a lot about. As you know, don't need to tell either of you, Burlington is challenged by a lack of affordable housing, and it particularly is pernicious and difficult for both seniors whose income has declined, of course, and people who have developmental disabilities. So these are some of the issues that I hear a lot about. More recently, of course, climate change is on people's mind, both from the perspective of course, the flood that we had here in Burlington, as you know, Rick, and also Indira, you know that that's on people's minds. So they're conscious because they've felt the impacts of climate change. And I might say, that they're a little bit enlightened in terms of what that can do. And I think, of course, then focused on the important levers that government has to help us all mitigate the impacts of climate change. People are wondering, because our climate change action plan has recently been released as a government, what does that mean for them? So yes, there are some things that have gone up in price, but on the other end, we're looking at some consumer rebates. We're looking how to shoulder businesses. And of course, I encounter businesses right here in Burlington who are already in the cap and trade system, because as you know, Ontario has engaged with Quebec and California. That list of states is growing. Our colleague Glenn Murray is seized with, and he's on the road a lot, talking to neighboring jurisdictions about how our companies can benefit from the cap and trade system, but also be incentivized to invest in technology. So these are some of the things that I'm certainly hearing about in my office, and that are preoccupying people, and I'm sure they will continue to be top of mind issues. Transportation, of course, as you know, in Halton is always an incredibly important issue, whether it's investments in transit, and congestion is really on people's minds as well. Those are some of the things that we're working on and that we're hearing about.
Indira?
Yeah.
And recognizing that, Eleanor represents 2/3 of Burlington approximately,
yes.
And I would say the median age is sort of higher than the median age of the riding you represent. So you represent Northeast Burlington, part of North Oakville, as well as Milton.
Yes.
Currently, then the riding is going to change at the next election. But what are you hearing from the people you serve?
Bottom line is, people are coming into our office talking about everyday issues that affect their daily lives, right? So, when people decide to go into their local member's office, it's because there's something that's troubling them or that they're concerned about. I can tell you in Halton, because really our area is one of the fastest growing areas in the country, most of those concerns and issues come, focus on growth issues. So, absolutely, as Eleanor said, so healthcare for sure, education, and also transportation. Those are the three top ones that people are concerned about. And, understandably, because, sometimes it takes a little bit of time to really deal with the growth. And in Halton, while we were aware that it was going to be growing at a remarkable rate, it's unprecedented growth. It's sort of unpredicted. So, generally when growth happens, it goes like this and then it levels off. But in Halton, it just kept going. So
I'm going to interrupt there and say,
okay.
So we've had best planning estimates with
Yes.
regard to the growth in Halton since 2006 with
Right.
the Places to Grow plan, and you know, Halton's at 548,000 people right now, and we're growing to 1 million people within 25 years. I mean, we've known this has been coming for a long time.
So what are we doing?
Well, I guess one of the I'm going to put you on the hot
Yeah.
spot just a little bit,
Sure.
Respectfully,
Yeah,
with regard
absolutely.
to Go Service for Milton. I
Yeah.
guess I'm looking as certainly the mayor of Burlington. I'm very satisfied
Yeah.
that we're going to have 15-minute all-day Go Service on the Lakeshore Go West line
Yes.
within the next 8 years. I've been counting down,
Yeah.
and ever since the projection was 10 years, now it's about 8 years.
Yeah.
But Milton, recognizing it's 110,000 people, it will be bigger than Burlington by 2031. And so many people commute to the east, but there's no specific timeline for GO train service to Milton. And I understand that there's a challenge with priorities and funding and all that, but that clearly has to be a priority.
So let me just sort of say a couple of things.
Sure.
Absolutely committed to two-way all-day GO train service, and we have been from the beginning. As many people know, that we'll talk about GO trains first, right? So several lines do serve the Halton area. So certainly the Lakeshore line and the Milton line. The Milton line brings with it some unique challenges because, frankly, we don't own the rail. We don't own the lines that the trains run on. So we have to work with our partners and ask them to allow us to add trains, which is an ongoing concern and issue at times. And so that conversation has to always be with CP Rail, which owns the lines, and asking them to allow us to add new trains. So a couple of things. You know, one thing I can tell you for sure is, so we have expanded. You know, right now over the years, I believe we're at, let me just see, I think we're to about 100 trips, I believe, that's coming through on the rail line in the next little while. You know, I need to get my numbers right, but basically we've increased train service in terms of the GO lines. We are also committing to 15-minute service during peak hours by the year 2020. So every 15 minutes to the peak lines. These are commitments that we're making while we are working with our partners. But there is a little bit of conversation going out there that is actually not accurate, that I think I have to sort of correct.
I'm just referring to a piece that was in the Metroland website this week with regard to Milton GO train service. For all-day service, it's beyond the 25-year horizon.
Yeah.
So maybe you can clarify that.
Actually, I do want to clarify that, and I'm actually going to, you know, go right back to the fact that when I heard about this 2041 number, all of us went, where did that number come from?
Okay.
So we started looking around, and we talked to our GO people, and we talked to our Metrolinx people, and we talked to our transportation people, and everybody said they didn't know where this idea that GO, two-way all-day GO on the Milton line wouldn't happen until 2041 came from. So finally, we realized that it actually must have come because there is a plan out there that is a 25-year plan that mentions it's a plan over 25 years. That doesn't mean, as you know, as a mayor, that the pieces inside that plan will all happen in the last year. So, you know, clearly that was a part of it. So, you know, I'm going to read you a statement that Metrolinx sent us to set the record straight. Metrolinx is not aware of any sources that would lead to the information that was posted in the articles. We are still working towards better service on the Milton GO line. Metrolinx recognizes the transformative potential of two-way all-day service on the Milton corridor, but we have consistently said an agreement with freight rail partners must be secured before this level of service can become a reality. So right off the bat, they're saying they have no idea where those numbers came from because they're not accurate. And that there are ongoing conversations with CP, that we're working to expand those lines, that we've done the best we could up till now, but we're committing to 15-minute service during peak hours by the year 2020. And we have increased many other ways. For example, you know, a number of buses that are coming now from Cambridge, that was a system, you know, so the GO bus lines have been increased in addition to the train lines.
I think people diminish the bus lines, unfortunately, but obviously that's a big part of the investment that Metrolinx is making, and often it's ahead ahead of when the GO train service is more enhanced.
Yeah, for sure.
Can I
So,
just
yeah,
can I
go
build on
ahead.
your comments,
Yeah,
Indira, 'cause
absolutely.
I think it's an important piece of context. We are fortunate in Burlington, as you know, in that we own the track. That
Right,
is to
yeah.
say that,
Yes.
that GO Transit owns the track. And in Indira's case, and in the people in her area and in Milton, it's CP. So you're going to compete there with freight traffic and freight priorities. And so what Indira has been doing is been leading a conversation in government with our colleague Stephen Del Duca, the Minister of Transportation, to navigate that important piece, which says how can we prioritize passenger traffic during peak hours and get people where they need to go. And of course, don't need to tell you, Rick, that's not only important for people's lives and their cares and concerns and getting home to their families, but it's an important piece to economic development too, because attracting jobs and investment to our communities is really about giving people that transportation choice, right? And making sure that single occupancy vehicle is fine, and no one's saying that it isn't, but isn't it great that we have other opportunities? And Indira and I, when we used to take the GO train much more often together,
we used to take it all the time.
Really can speak to how critical that GO train service is. So that's just a bit of context.
Yeah, and it's about getting people home on time, you know, to be home with their families. But I would encourage people, if they feel this is important, to really, you know, talk to CP and let CP know that this is something that they really feel is a priority for them in this community, because ultimately, in the end, our conversations are happening with them and asking them to allow us to increase the service on there. So it's a difficult conversation. It's one that we can only do to a certain point, but it has to involve a partnership.
I know that's a challenging issue.
Yes.
It's an important one. So I just got the 2-minute warning in my ear. So time flies when you're having fun. But I do want to touch briefly on the fact that an announcement was made very recently with regard to provincial gas tax funding for transit, for municipalities that have transit service, a big increase, which I'm personally very appreciative of. Do you want to elaborate, Eleanor, on the rationale for that?
Well, again, it goes back to what we said a few minutes ago, which was transportation choice. So great cities, great jurisdictions around the world are great and successful because they offer a range of transportation choices for their citizens. So I know, Rick, that transit has always been an important issue for you, both from a citizen perspective, meaning people's everyday lives, and also for our businesses, and we share those concerns. And so doubling the gas tax, so I think it's about $2 million that the City of Burlington gets now, and by 2021, that will double to $4 million. And that allows you and your colleagues a couple of important pieces, I think. First of all, it's sustainable funding. Cities and municipalities are always looking for the ability to plan into the distance. And these are big infrastructure pieces, so you can use that money, of course, to enhance the number of buses that you want, hopefully buses with bike racks on them, which is always a nice thing to have. But when you look forward, it just gives you that sustainable ability to plan, and it gives the municipality the ability to say, if we want to double the number of routes, if we want to look at doubling the number of passengers, if we want to connect to those enhanced GO train services, then you have that sustainable funding going forward. So
it is very helpful. It's very helpful, and the timing is good because we're doing a transit plan this year in 2017. Right. We'll look at some increases in funding over the next number of years. So the timing of the announcement, the timing of when we're going to get the funding suits us very well. Interesting, though, in the Greater Toronto-Hamilton area, we're 7 million people and growing to 10 million by 2041. And if we do what we've always done with regard to transportation, we get what we've always got, which is more and more traffic congestion. So we need to think very differently and act differently,
not to mention
which we are.
Climate change impacts, right?
And the climate change impacts as well.
40% of the GHG emissions come from vehicles, so it's something important for us to think about for sure and act on.
Allows municipalities really to improve local transit. We know that these are growing issues for all of you, and I think I was really proud when we announced this, to be honest with you, and I know it's going to have a big impact in Halton in general, and certainly in Milton and Burlington and Oakville.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much to the two of you for being on with me today on Burlington Matters. I want to thank Eleanor McMahon, the Minister of Tourism, Culture and Sport, and the Member of Provincial Parliament for Burlington, for joining us, along with Indira Naidoo-Harris, the Member of Provincial Parliament for Halton, and as well as the Minister of the Status of Women and Early early years in childcare. I almost missed that. But thank you both to taking time. We could go on and on and on talking about all the issues that we're dealing with locally as well as provincially, but I thank you for taking time. And I thank you for tuning in to Burlington Matters here on Cogeco TV, which is truly local television.